What is up, music mystery freaks? We are here at episode 2. You guys made it. You did it. You did it, guys. You clicked on the button and you got to the video. Episode 2, if you can see here, if you can see on the title, it is about System of a Down, and we're talking about their Toxicity album today. So what I'd like to do is talk just a quick second about System of a Down. They are a hard rock metal band. All the members are of Middle Eastern descent, and that is exactly what makes this story today super duper interesting. Let me take a quick drink of the water. I'm the water champ. Nobody can touch me. Let's see here. So our first article we're going to look at today is through rollingstone.com. And I think the interesting thing about Toxicity, just to start out, is that it was released an exact week before September 11th attacks. Just that itself is... And let's just say there are a couple songs that may be linked to those actions of whoever was behind those things, whatever forces were behind those attacks. We may never know. Just like a lot of other incidences in America and world history and military history, whatever you'd like to say about it, it was crazy and it changed the world forever. But there are definitely artists and musicians that were clued in some way. I know the Tinfoil podcast, shout out to Sam Tripoli and all the guys on there. They did touch on September 11th when it came to subliminal artistry and, you know, maybe certain artists drew things or made things. I know there was a gentleman who had a art studio in one of the buildings exactly where one of the planes hit, and he had a sculpture of all these planes. I believe it might have been a sculpture of him, and he had all these planes coming around. So there's a lot of weirdness, in my opinion, about big episodes in history where I think certain people can clue in to those incidences before, whether it's in a dream or whether they painted it or made a sculpture or wrote a song. I really think there are people that can tap in to certain things, whether they like it or not. I think it's a gift and a curse, just like Monk said. Hey, Monk, why do you like this, a gift or a curse? You know, and I think there are people that are able to tap into the future or able to tap into certain insights that not everybody can tap into, or not everybody will believe what they think had happened in a dream or in just a day vision or something like that. So let's first take a look. Let's first take a look at this Rolling Stone article, and the title is System of a Down's Toxicity: 10 Things You Didn't Know. And I took a sneak peek at a couple of these. I just want to say before we get into this subject, I was going to talk about another subject, but I wasn't as psyched about that subject that I am about this subject. So that'll be coming in another couple episodes. I want to do more research on that subject that I was thinking about doing from last night's thoughts for the episode, but definitely that'll come soon. I don't want to spoil what it is. It's definitely a big name, big band, and definitely certainly some mysteries behind the group that I wanted to do today. But that's all good. We got so much time to talk about other bands and other mysteries. So I want to get into the System of a Down Toxicity album, because there's so much stuff surrounding just this record and even the band's relationship during this record. So it's really cool. It's a great record. If you guys don't know about System of a Down or Toxicity album, it's definitely one of those records to check out. I'm sure they're on Spotify. I'm not officially sure, but I know that you can find the Toxicity album pretty much anywhere, and I'm sure on YouTube you can find a lot of those songs. So let's start with number 1 here. Like I was saying before, the album was released a week before 9/11, exactly a week, and topped the Billboard 200 the week of the tragedy. So I find that very interesting, and it sold 222,000 copies in the first week, which is ridiculous, but also ridiculous because there's a lot of songs on there that are not only super weird lyrically, but super weird that they wrote stuff before 9/11, and there's stuff in some songs that I will get to that are definitely questionable when it comes to were they able to have some insight at all before 9/11. So number one was the album release date, which is pre 9/11, literally a week before. And here's another tidbit that very, very well-known rock producer Rick Rubin offered the band crucial feedback on their reliably demented lyrics. Ooh. So Rick Rubin even touched on that and said, what is this? And Rick Rubin is the man. He's the producer of countless rock records. Let me just get to Rick. I'm going to get off track for 2 seconds here. I want everybody to check Rick Rubin out. He is a bouse. He has the craziest beard. So yeah, just to run off a few of his projects, he's worked with AC/DC, Adele, Aerosmith. He's even worked with other artists like Jay-Z, Frankie Ocean, Eminem, Metallica. Let's see. Obviously, some of his bigger ones are Chili Peppers. He's done a lot of stuff with Chili Peppers. Obviously, like we're talking today, System of a Down. And then another one to throw in there is Tom Petty. And we all know Tom. So, yeah, he is no stranger to big names, no stranger to very serious artists. And when someone like Rick Rubin has issues about the demented lyrics, woo, you got to think about that. You wonder what these guys maybe had some clue-ins on things mentally. So here's from the number 2 line with Rick Rubin. From Wired were the eyes of a horse on a jet pilot to pull the tapeworm out of your ass. Tankian and Malakian crafted some of the most vividly perplexing lyrics in rock history on Toxicity. And what's interesting is this first line of the Wired were the eyes on a horse on a jet pilot. That song itself is kind of creepy to me. Not kind of. It really is. I'm going to get out jet pilot lyrics because they talk about the planes going over the bay, and New York has water. New York City has water before Brooklyn and Manhattan and all those areas. There is water, so yeah, definitely weird lyrics. Definitely weird lyrics for what happened a week later. Let me just read through the first line. Wired were the eyes of a horse on a jet pilot, one that smiled when he flew over the bay. Wired were the eyes of a horse on a jet pilot, one that smiled when he flew over the bay. And the second part goes, my horse is a shackled old man. His remorse was that he couldn't survey the skies right before they went gray. My horse and my remorse flying over a great bay. So, yeah, it's up to, just like anything in music and art, it's up to the eyes of the beholder to check out really what this stuff means. But to me, my opinion, the Music Mysteries podcaster opinion, that sorry about that. That definitely hits something in me, especially around that time of history in 2001. Now, he could be talking about another attack. He could be talking about Middle East skirmishes. He could be talking about something he went through when he was a child. We don't know. We may never know, because you never know if there's interviews that have just gotten squashed about this with Serge or any of the other guys in the system. But that song specifically, when I first heard the Toxicity album in high school, when I was getting really big into System, the whole album was very, very aura. Very aura. There's a lot of interesting origins behind these songs, and they have interesting lyrics. if you guys have time to check out Toxicity album and read through all the lyrics and at least listen to what these guys are saying in the music, wow. Not only is it weird, but they have some songs on the Toxicity album that are kind of that are definitely sexual, and it's interesting what they sometimes use for movies with sexual related context and even drug related context. There's a Third Eye Blind song that's all about drugs and all about drug use, and it's on the radio, and they're just talking about it, and no one sees it, but yet you can go to another station and they say shit, they say fuck, and that gets bleeped out. But you go to some of these rock songs, and they're talking about crazy stuff, and it's all good. So it's very interesting how some songs, some genres, some radio stations, they'll cue in and out to certain insights. Interesting. And I'm going to skip through number 3. If you guys are watching the screenshot, it's just about how the guitar player did more overdubbed guitar parts for his record playing than for his guitar playing on this record than the first record they did together. And then number 4 is what I was just talking about, how you can just skip the lyrics. We just like how it sounds, just like who am I thinking of? Outkast. Hey Ya. It's a breakup song. It's about breakup. It's about bad things, but hey ya. It's nice and cheery, it's up there. It's up there. Yeah. Let's do that. So number 4, despite the orgy references, the song Bounce off of Toxicity was used on a family-friendly film, The Secret Life of Pets. And I don't know how recent this movie was, but I do remember seeing an ad where they used Bounce. So I think I've actually seen the ad for this movie recently. Not recently, but probably a couple years ago. Secret Life of Pets. Because I remember seeing the commercial for it and going, wait a minute, I know that song, and it shouldn't be a kid's movie. It shouldn't be on a kid's movie. So yeah, it came out 2016, July 8th, 2016. So about a year and a half ago. I do remember this commercial. Very interesting that they would put... Who is they? They is Universal. So Universal puts on the song Bounce for a children's movie. Just real quick, I do want to read a couple lyrics of Bounce. Just to let people know that may have kids, this may be what your kids are listening to when they're trying to look up, when they're trying to watch a movie about pets. And I realize, yes, bounce, 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 ha ha ha, it's a fun little song. But there is a lyric here. Oh no, this is not Bounce by... This is Flatbush, my bad. This is... Okay, so here's the first verse. I went out on a date with a girl a bit too late. She had so many friends, gliding through many hands. I brought my pogo stick just to show her a trick. She had so many friends, gliding through many hands. Now, you don't have to be a lyric or a poet major or anybody that's been studying lyrics or words of poetry for that long to understand that a pogo stick is probably a sexual term for yo dick. And he went out on a date in this song. She had a bunch of friends, and there was a lot of hands. And I don't think you have to be you don't have to be a sexual education teacher to understand what that is. And the chorus is just jump, pogo, bounce, pogo, down, up, jump, bounce, up, down. Okay? So that's pretty ridiculous. And and here's one line. Oh, I'd like to spread you out, touching whoever's behind. And if you listen to this song, Serge does this crazy lyric with that. Oh, I'd like to spread you out. So it's kind of like operatic, if you may. And yeah, this record is full of goodies, and I'm excited that I got the idea to talk about this today. Find this pretty interesting. Metallica were huge fans of the album. Probably most likely because it was very heavy, and just the fact that there's a lot of good songs on there. They got a lot of good publicity through this album, which is interesting that a lot of people really don't pick up on some of these, in my opinion, messages from these guys. And so let's find another thing here. Oh, here we go. This is another thing I found while looking at this. Just like a lot of other bands before them, they had some incidences in the studio, whether it was, I'm not sure if it was substance related or if it was just personal issues through their music or through what was going on outside of the studios. But the guitar player and the drummer decided to get it on a lot, decided to kick each other's asses a lot. And there's a quote by the guitar player. He said, "There were times when we effing threw down. John and I were totally going at it. My lip was all cut up, and I took a microphone stand and hit him across the head, and his head was all bashed in." Chavo, bass player, and Serge, the singer, were looking at us saying, "Oh man, we're done." But right after we fought, we took each other to the hospital and got stitched up right next to each other. Both of us were sitting there laughing, saying, "This is one of the coolest moments in the history of our band." So it seems like maybe that stuff brought them closer together, and you can tell in the music that there probably was some angst and there was some stuff in the air, definitely some thickness in the air for the record. And I think there were a lot of bands pre-internet, pre Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre all these social media, or where you can bounce out all your stuff and have more and more publicity. I think a lot of bands were fighting in the studio. A lot of bands were going in there maybe under the influence of something, and they had to get the emotions out for their songs, and maybe the devil popped out in one of those minutes and they had to fight about something. I'm sure Sabbath and Zeppelin and maybe even the Beatles, maybe those guys had some problems in the studio that we will never hear about. Mainly because that would look bad towards the fan base, towards the young population that would say, "Oh, little Jimmy, we can't buy their record. We heard that they fought during this record." Well, let me tell you what. Maybe that made it better. Maybe fighting with oh man, what is the... the drummer John, and then the guitar player Darren. Maybe that was part of the process. Maybe for a time that they were just so mad at each other that they had to do it. And I can definitely relate, not to the fighting stances, but being aggravated with people that are close to you, much like if you're roommates, much like if you're dating, much like if you're in other relationships. It's very similar, where you have to be around these people for a certain amount of time just to get the job done. And that may have translated to a lot of great music on the record. No doubt. Number 8 here on the article. The Beatles helped the band learn how to balance the wacky metal aggression of their early work with concise pop song structures. So, just like I was saying, I think the fighting, I think the aggravation, I think the total madness of where these guys came from. All four are either, I'm not officially sure, I apologize to the Super System fans and, System in general. I'm not sure if they're first generation immigrants or if they're second generation. I apologize to them and any super duper fans out there, but that's gonna translate, whether it's lyrical, whether it's political. I know Serj Tankian is a very open political person and does a lot of humanitarian work through his music, through his projects. So I know that there is a lot of background to those guys' history when it comes to the Middle East, when it comes to the issues over there. Let's go into this a little bit. Going into Toxicity, I knew Serj wanted to sing more, so I guess that was a kind of progression and an evolution for the band. And this is Darren talking about the record in some sort of quote, most likely. I wanted to do all that, yet not lose the heaviness of the band. And I guess the hard punk metal aspect, you could lose that sometimes when you get a little eclectic. So we were just trying to balance that fine line and not lose the fans. So that's exactly what they did in Toxicity. I think that's interesting how they related the Beatles here. Now, I'm not sure. It might have just been through. Yeah, I think he's just citing the Beatles. I don't think any of the Beatles actually talked to the band about it. Yeah, here we go. The Beatles made me realize song structure, putting things into 3 minutes, compress these things. So I think what really the title meant of this number for the article was that he would listen to the Beatles. He would hear, okay, they do wacky shit too, but they put it inside 3.5 minutes. They put it inside a 3.5 minute, 4 minute song, so that way everybody can think and they can take the structure. I think a lot of these, there's a lot of hard rock and metal bands that will do, huge long songs that are progression after progression, and they might try to do, look at Metallica. They've done records where they've had songs that were minutes on minutes on minutes. I don't mind that. Rush does that too. They've had La Via Strangiata is one of my favorite songs by Rush. That's a 9-minute song, and it has different genres in itself. So that's impressive. But think about it. If you're trying to make a couple bucks and you want the industry to respect that, and you want another Rush song, if you want the working man to respect what you're doing and accept your art, then you need to make a couple of those songs so people can digest it. Excuse me. I think that's fine to do songs like that, and then also throw in songs that are going to be more progressive and more that are going to be songs for maybe the musician out there, or the person who likes to enjoy something a little more out of the blue. I know they have songs that they'll have the pop structure, they'll have the radio edit, and then they'll have stuff that branches off, and that may be more of a record, more of an album or record version. For example, the song Aerials, which is one of my favorite songs off of Toxicity and of Systems, mainly because of what they do with the lyrics, the singing style, lyrics, and also at the end, they do a really, really cool Middle Eastern vibe breakdown. I believe it's some sort of flute, a lot of Middle Eastern hand drums, and I think finger cymbals as well. It's really cool. Sometimes I'll even skip to just that part right at the end when they hit that little cymbal bell and they go into this really cool Middle Eastern vibe track. And you don't see that with other bands where they do that, other than the Rushes and those kind of, and the Beatles, those kind of bands, because they know they have nothing to lose. All they need to do is cut that 3.5 minute for the radio play, and for the Spotify, and for the YouTube and the video, because I'm pretty sure in the video version for the music video of Aerials, they do not have what I'm pertaining to. I'll have to double check that. Guys, don't hurt me on the comments for that. But that is something to think about where, yes, they did have a lot of different things going on with Toxicity versus their earlier stuff. But think about it. They still kept those vibes, just like Darren was saying. They kept the metal, they kept the punk, but yet they were able to add just the simple structures of the Beatles and of the Doors. And well, the Doors, they're a bit complicated. We might have to get into the Doors in another episode, because I could go on a tangent about the Doors and Jim Morrison, but love those guys. But the Beatles, yeah, I mean, I have to cite them too as someone who has helped me to understand what pop structure is. And I think the Beatles I don't really think they were the first band to do a basic pop structure. I may be wrong. This episode's not about the Beatles, and I didn't take any time to look up Beatle pop structure history at all. But I think just like a lot of genre starters, or a lot of genre top people in the industries now, I don't think it's always about who did it first. It's about who made it famous or made it popular. Per example, electronic music, everybody has their idea of, who started electronic music? When did it start? Who's the top of the charts for electronic? Who's the top artist? Now, for me, when it comes to when I was getting into electronic music and I was getting into those things when I was in high school, one of my first guys for electronic music was Skrillex. Now, everybody's going to be freaking out going, he was not the first electronic guy, dude. He was not the first. But he was one of the first electronic guys that I heard. So what makes me think is going, okay, I like that artist, I like his sound, and that made me check out other electronic artists, made me check out the electronic genre alongside all the subgenres that they are. You can list off 300 different subgenres based on beats per minute and based on the synth styles, and you can go on for days about what kind of electronic genre you're into. But the basic concept I'm trying to get at is, I don't think it's about always calling out who was the first. I think it's about who made it popular. It's about who made it famous. And I don't think it's a cocky thing. It's more of a thing that I think when you cite certain bands or certain artists or certain musicians, I don't think it's about being wrong about who made this first or who made that first. Let's be honest, guys. There's only a certain number of notes. There's only a certain number of ways to play something. And I think at the very end, as long as you can get cool sounds, you can make something your own. And at the end of the day, if something sounds similar, it sounds similar. But I think when you're able to make something work and you were one of the first ones to do it and you made it popular that way, cool. Let's cite the Beatles for that. Moving on. Moving on. Okay, number 9. System of a Down wrote more than 40 songs for Toxicity. And I'm going to go to the Wikipedia for the track list. So the official track list only has 14. And then there's bonus editions. We have 5 extra songs that were live. 4 of them were live songs for the, looks like French special edition. And then we have, DVD bonuses, Japanese editions, computer media editions. So 14 songs made the record. 40 they wrote. You wonder what songs were cut, and you wonder what was on that. You wonder what they were writing about, and maybe Rick Rubin was like, whoa, these are the 14 that sound chiller than all the other 40. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find who they released it through. I want to see who the label was. Apologies for not finding this earlier. Gosh, I cannot see it. Excuse me, Columbia. So we got another episode where Columbia Records is being pronounced through the label, just like last episode with Sinatra and the Rat Pack. So yeah, Columbia Records. So you wonder if some of the things that were talked about in, say, Jet Pilot, like we were talking about lyrics earlier, and Bounce, maybe it's more of a thing where, hey, the metaphor works. You can talk about this. You can talk about there were so many hands. You can talk about pogo sticks because you didn't say the word penis. Or you can talk about, you can call the title of Chop Suey instead of, what is the old one called? So I remember this song specifically was going to be a really weird title. It might have been Suicide. I think it was called Suicide or something. I think one of the first cuts of this song, they called it something really, really awkward. And I think they just had to say, hey, let's call it Chop Suey. Yeah. The Suicide was the name because in the beginning, yeah, it says it right here. It cites it on the Wikipedia for this song. When John clicks in, we're rolling Suicide. So it's very interesting that they decided to call it Chop Suey, not Suicide, mainly for probably sales. I don't think a lot of people would be buying this album for their kids if there was a song called Suicide or the single. Yeah, I don't think people on iTunes, because this was iTunes era, I don't think they would have people would have been buying a song called Suicide, or people would have liked a credit card charge single iTunes song title called Suicide. So Chop Suey works. And it's actually still on the song today. So if you guys click on Chop Suey and check out the intro, you can still hear We're Rolling Suicide. I like how they I really like how they kept that, because then you can get an insight on maybe how they had to change certain things just for the industry, just like we talked about with Darren citing the Beatles for his pop structures in Toxicity, and Serge's pop structures in this album. You wonder if part of that came with the title making as well, especially for sales. I don't think, if you're trying to hit a target audience that wants to buy things and are consumers, and they may have parents helping them out with buying the record, I do not think you would get people super psyched about a song title called Suicide. All right, let's go back to this. So System of a Down were exploding with creativity in the studio. The quartet wrote roughly 45 songs, so it's over 40. And they recorded 33. That's interesting too. So they cut about half the songs they recorded. It wasn't just songs they were doing. They were maybe doing pre-production, or maybe were just in their writing phase. The 33 of those 45 songs actually got recorded. And I don't know if that's through actual studio production or if this is pre-production 33 songs. Interesting 33, though. I think that's a symbolic number in societies. But anyways, I'm not going to read into the 33 as much. I'm not going to get all who am I thinking of? Jim Carrey on you, number 23. I'm not going to be writing crazy stuff on the walls or anything. But here we go. The quartet wrote roughly 45 songs and recorded 33, with no idea how to whittle the results down to one track list. And here's a quote by, I believe it's the drummer, John. And he says, "It took us a long time to even approach that subject," he told MTV. "It was really tough." And I believe "it was really tough" was quoted by, I believe that's the last name of the bass player is, yes, so Chavo, the bass player, Chavo, said it was really tough. We all had to choose from all those great songs. We had to pick 17 that Andy Wallace mixed, and out of those 17, we had to pick 14 that made the album. Okay, so bottom line, 33 were probably rough pre-production recordings, but I'm sure to System, they probably wanted to keep all of those. And so from 45, they whittled down to 33 that they recorded. From 33, they went down to 17, that ended up making 14 through the album. So they mixed completely 17, probably radio ready and radio friendly and record ready to go, 17. Then I'm sure when it came to CD space, money, promotional services, they had to do 14. I'm not sure if there's actually a typical time frame with albums, or if it needs to be around an hour. I think this one was around an hour. Let's see. So the 14 songs were about 45 minutes, 44 in a second, if you want to be exact, with the album. So yeah, I'm not sure if a lot of record labels or a lot of bands have to cut based on the album space, or is it more based on how they sell the record? I'm not exactly sure, but I know when it comes to singles, they want to have most likely that 3.5 minute mark, even only maybe 2.5. I know there's a lot of songs on radio that are around 3 minutes or less. You look at the Ramones. I think they're one of those bands where not necessarily the butt of jokes when it comes to short songs, but man, that 1.5, 2 minute mark, maybe even less. I'm sure there's songs that are under a minute for the Ramones, but they were that in my opinion, good sound, definitely in that first rock punk era where they had just the the double time with the singer and everything and guitars. But I think along with the Beatles, you get the Ramones. They were around when I think you had to say to yourself, do you want to be credible? You got to make that really, really short song. You got to make it count in a short amount of time, just like a commercial, just like a TV show, just like a movie. You only have an hour and a half for people to think about a movie. You only have, depending on commercials, and if you're on a certain streaming site, you only have 20 minutes an episode, or 40 minutes, 45 minutes an episode for your TV shows. And the same goes for, and then ads are like 30 to 60 seconds. Same goes for music. I think you have to put your emotion into a 3 minute, 2 minute song. And I think that's incredible that in one album, they went from punk, metal, rock band straight into this ridiculous 3.5 minute, 4.5 minute album that, in my opinion, essentially changed the way people saw this band. And I know for me, the Toxicity record was a huge influence for being a metal fan, for being a System fan, and for also being a musician and drummer. A lot of great drum parts, a lot of great guitar, a lot of great bass, and a lot of great singing. So it's a great record. I'm going to keep saying it. It's great. It's a great record. Yeah. All right. Oh, here's an interesting tidbit. So, like I was just saying, how Toxicity really changed how System recorded and how they released their tracks and how they wrote their tracks and how they recorded their tracks and how they thought about, we have to put this in a nice small package with a little bow and send it out to the radio stations and send it out to the record labels, or excuse me, to the record stores and to the homes of many, many, many people. Here's what happened, I think after. I think this album is after. Steal This Album. So, System of a Down ultimately handled the annoyance with their trademark subversive charm. After re-recording most of the material and reshaping the track list, they released the cleverly titled Steal This Album, packaged in a CD jewel case with no artwork. So, in my opinion, that's very relatable to the White Album, Beatles, and also relatable to Metallica's Black Album, where they pretty much said, we've done all this promotion in our career already. We've taken money, we've taken time, we've taken we've taken all these things out of the actual music to do artwork, to do promotion stuff, to do anything that wasn't music. And for a lot of musicians, for a lot of fans, I think there is something about just totally stripping it down to just the music. And I love that the title of Steal This Album. It'd be mainly because I'm sure they were, I don't think getting backlash, but I think they definitely wanted to get back to their underground roots with this. Now I'm going to check the date of this. Yep, so this was roughly a year after the Toxicity release. It was November 26, 2002, so a little over a year of after the 9/11 attacks, after the Toxicity release. So I'm sure that brought a lot of interesting things into their careers and into the press box for the band. I'm sure they caught a lot of interesting questions. Excuse me. I'm sure they caught a lot of interesting questions when it came to what they were writing about and how it is linked with a lot of things that happened right after the release. So yeah, this was 2002, and I think a lot of these songs, let's see if I know any of these songs by heart. You know what? If I'd throw this on Spotify or something, I know I would know these songs. Maybe not. But anyways, so pretty much what went on, in my opinion, Toxicity. Gosh, how many singles were off Toxicity? 1, 2, 3, maybe even more. So yeah, the singles from Toxicity: Chop Suey, aka We're Rollin' Suicide. Number 2 was the song Toxicity off of Toxicity. And then number 3 was Aerials. So you got 3 big singles that, other than a couple of their sorry, I'm looking at dates here. Sorry, a lot of hits here, and so I think what they really wanted to do is it seems like they put a lot of the stuff that they cut right onto the Steal This album. So I really enjoyed that they did that. I think I really do believe it showed to the fans, to the rock fans, to the metal fans, to anybody that was listening or that was around the fans, to show that they wanted to that they were legit, that they were real musicians. And so what if Toxicity made a lot of money? So what if there was 3 singles from that one album? They wanted to show what else they were writing. They wanted to show that they had the goofy stuff still. They wanted to show that they could do more, I guess you could say, underground stuff, and keep their sound, keep their especial, keep it going, keep the mozzarella, keep the fresh mozzarella. And so I like what it says here. I don't know if this is exactly what it is. I think in my opinion, I think Steal This Album title is more based on the fact that they probably had a lot of sales from Toxicity, a lot of good press, and I think there was a lot of underground fans, just like there are now with bands and artists and just industry fan bases. People sometimes don't like when that artist gets huge, especially if they bought their first album, they bought their demo from their merch table when they were touring for the first time, or they got to meet the band when they were just smoking in the alleyway or something like that. I think a lot of people, a lot of fans, when they're around for that era, I think a lot of fans get PO'd when they're huge. it's much like when it's kind of like the I'm gonna say it. It's like when you're not sure about someone in the school or in the class, but when everybody's hanging out with that person now. Okay, he or she is cool now, or I don't really like that teacher, but when Jimmy says he or she is cool, then maybe it's kind of being it's being relatable, but then I think it's on the wrong end sometimes. I think it's like when you have your own thing, but then when someone not steals it, but when they're another fan too of the same thing, it's not as personal. And I can understand that, where if you're watching a good show and you think it's your show, oh man, like this is my show, this is my series, this is my movie. And then when everybody comes in on and goes, oh man, I love that show too, I love that show, I love that movie, man, it's so good, then you kind of lose some of the flair. But I think what people need to be doing is just embracing it. If that band that you met way back when they were smoking their Reds, you were giving them handshakes and giving them high fives, what a great show, then you need to hold on to that. You need to say that I'm happy for this band that they made it. I'm happy for this band or artist that they did what they did. It's touring and being on stage or doing whatever you do during the day and during the nighttime and your daily tasks. Everybody's task is important. Everybody's. So I think when it comes to System going off of Toxicity, going right into Steal This Album when they had a lot of most likely cut songs that were from Toxicity's project, I think it's interesting that they kind of stripped down and decided not to go super flair with the record art and super crazy with releasing singles. See, there's 2 singles here, and looks like the top one is Inner Vision, and then the second one was Boom. And it looks like they were released, at least the single albums versions were released a little bit after. Inner Vision was released before, and then Boom was released the next year. So 2 singles, and Toxicity had 3 singles they released, and Toxicity has some bangers, same with Steal This Album. And Steal This Album wasn't a bad Billboard chart either. They made 15. It reached number 15. I know Toxicity topped the charts when it came out, and I'm not sure about Steal This Album references when it came to their songs. I wasn't able to dive into Steal This Album when I first got into System, but I know Toxicity, they have a lot of references about pop culture and about things that you should be really diving into and really thinking about, hey, are we really looking into what these artists are saying or these musicians are saying? Very interesting work on Toxicity. I want to try to find something. Here we go. Woo-hoo. All right, number 10. Okay, and I'll look up some lyrics too. Don't worry. Okay, so the track ATWA was inspired with the Fascinations by Darren's thoughts about Charles Manson. I did not know that. So yeah, let's go through the lyrics. I like bringing up lyrics, especially for people that are on the video podcast part of it. That way you guys get a really good visual of what I'm talking about, and also a really good idea that that there is some imagery and there is some things that we need to be looking at, not only in rock music, metal music, music in general, but also in life and in other ways of expression, whether it's a painting, whether it's a sculpture, whether it's a building, or whether it's just your daily life when you're driving your car to go get a quick bite, or you're driving to to go see your friends, or you're walking your dog, or you're just walking outside, or you're throwing on the TV. I think it's so good to have insight on looking at things a little more with the magnifying glass, and that's what I'm doing more and more of, and looking at shows and movies and movie posters and album artwork and all these things that may have more symbolism than we truly think. Just like when you go to a Smithsonian in DC, or you go to your local church, or you're going to a museum. There's things that I know that are in plain sight that people cannot comprehend because they're not seeing that yet. They can't comprehend that, oh, maybe this figure in the painting, or this person in the album artwork is a symbolism for something happening, or a symbolism for something that may happen, or a secret, a government secret. Oh, a government secret. Or it could have been a band secret. And the more we get into this podcast, the more episodes we do, the more feedback I get about topics that you guys want to hear about, the more I'm diving into crazier and crazier topics. I think we're going to see that. We're going to see more and more imagery, more and more metaphorical things that include things that go on in our day-to-day lives that we're not even thinking about. We don't even think about. So let's topple the ATWA lyrics. And so this starts more in like a ballad form, and I think the intro is just guitar. And then I think the chorusy part is more heavy, punkier, kind of metal, big drums, big guitar, big bass, big lyrics, screamy lyrics. So the initials, or ATWA, stands for air, trees, water, and animals. So more of an environmental title, let's say. Okay, so it repeats a lot with the chorus. So the first verse is, hey, you see me, pictures crazy, all the world I've seen before me passing by. I've got nothing to gain, to lose, all the world I've seen before me passing by. And I really like the harmonies they do on that intro, if you guys have heard that one yet. And then the repeating chorus goes, you don't care about how I feel, I don't feel it anymore. You don't care about how I feel, I don't feel it anymore. So this could be pertaining to environmental problems. The album title is Toxicity. We got to remember that. And so I'm not exactly seeing where the Manson metaphor comes in. Is it maybe that he was maybe a sociopath, or somebody who couldn't feel emotion? Oh my goodness, I have no idea. Maybe the article will tap into that a little better. So let's read this last part of the article of Rolling Stone. So with its melancholy lullaby lyrics, hey, you see me, pictures crazy, all the world I've seen before me passing by, in relatively concise arrangement, ATWA is one of Toxicity's least surreal moments, but its inspiration is most surprising. The acronym ATWA, Air, Trees, Water, Animals, was coined by notorious... Oh, okay, here we go. Was coined by notorious convict Charles Manson as a term to promote harmony through nature. So that's where we get the Manson connection with this, with the track. When Darren, or I don't know who was personnel on that. Okay, so they both wrote lyrics. Okay, so Serge Tankian and Darren Malachian, I like that K. I had to throw that in there. Were on the lyrics. Were on the lyric credits. So yeah, that's interesting. So he says here, Darren says, it's something that he tends to really be focused on. And I believe he's going back to Manson. Even his so-called family that he had, there was a method behind what happened there. The Charles Manson everybody sees on television, everything is always one-sided on television. True. It's about who owns the networks. I don't agree with killing anybody. I don't agree with going in and slashing anybody's throats or anything. Writing shit on the walls. That's not what I'm into. That's not the side of the Charles Manson that I'm into. It's more of his ideas and his thoughts on society. End quote. So what he's talking about is he's taking a site, or he's taking he's giving credit to what Manson promoted through some, I guess you could say, more hippie vibe, of the 60s, and having the harmony with nature and being out with the nature consciousness. And I think what Darren is saying here is that he's not trying to promote the killings that the Charles Manson family did. He's promoting what Manson's early beliefs were and his early more 60s vibe that he had, quite possibly alongside some of the cultist type vibes that the Manson family definitely gave off. And Charles Manson is another one of those guys that makes you think. He was also a musician, just like System's members. So I'm sure there are people that do take things from him, being that he was a singer-songwriter, and that's why he was in those areas of I believe California, and that's why the Manson family was attacking certain people. I'm not going to go into that on this episode. I'd love to get into those things because it is music related, and there's a lot of stuff behind the famous murders that were music related. I want to stop there with the Manson stuff because, just like with the Beatles stuff, that's for another episode altogether. Okay, so that's the end of the Rolling Stone article. Love this article. Thank you, Rolling Stone. Thank you, Ryan Reed, the author. And this was from September 4th, 2016. So roughly 15 years after the record was released. I mean, it might have been even exactly. Yeah, so they released... Yeah, so the article was released 15 years after the record. So that's not... I think they did it on purpose. But I like how they did that. Very nice. Very nice. Anything else before we get out of here? Definitely stuff to think about. Definitely stuff to warp the brain a little bit for the weekend to come. Is there another song that's weird? Oh my goodness. I know there is a song that the Needles is weird. Needles talks about, I believe this is about, by the way, it's snowing, Dippin' Dots outside here in Columbus. So if you guys like Dippin' Dots candy, go get some. Free plug. You're welcome. There is a song. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I like this line. 'Cause you, my tapeworm, tells me what to do. Okay, I'm not going to read that, but if you guys are on video, I'm not going to repeat this 4 million times because that's all they say on one of these parts, but in my opinion, that's a metaphor for thinking your own thoughts. Like I said in the last episode, very important, very important. Think your own thoughts when you're listening to music, even if it's super poppy, even if it's Lord, you're welcome. Free advertising, you're welcome. Even if it's whoever, even if it's the industry standard of music and they came with a pack of bubble gum. you still need to look into that. If you're into, pop groups and shoot, even I know I've been into more jazz and more blues lately, old blues and jazz stuff. I still look into that, and very very interesting that was definitely one of the first times that people would have to put lyrics. It was one of those selling points after jazz industry kind of was like, okay, we need something else. That was kind of that was one of those industries that was very integrated with lyrical content. People said to themselves, we need lyrics. Lyrics are going to sell, just like a poem, just like a book, just like speaking in movies, lines in movies. That stuff sells. It matters what people say in the lyrics. And that's, with blues, there's a certain structure to a lot of blues songs. And so I think it wasn't limited with lyrics, but you could tell that there was some forcing when it came to what they were going to talk about. And I know I was tapping in on Spotify, you're welcome Spotify, a day or two ago looking at some old 60s music, I believe it was. And yeah, it seems like some of these guys were very forceful with their lyrics. So I think that's where we get a lot of the pop lyrics nowadays, where it's just kind of like, hey, we need lyrics. We need someone to say something. We need someone to sing something to add to the great production. And I'll be honest, I don't know if it's just me being a musician, being into instruments and things like that, but I'm a huge fan of instrumentals without the lyrics. I could listen to a rap track without the lyrics. I could listen to a rock tune without the lyrics. I would enjoy that as much as hearing the lyrics. I think sometimes the lyrics do mess with you. They either mess with you or they don't mess with you, and they show you something. I think they can either distract you from what you're hearing, the great music, the great tones, and the great production, or they show you a message. And I think it's either one of the two. I do not think that artists will just go out there and say, okay, I'm going to write a song about nothing and see what comes out of it. I think they're either bullshitting or they're trying to tell you something. I know for a fact that Toxicity, this album right here, is definitely one of those records. And System is one of those groups that will write music for a reason. They are not a pop group. And I think it shows when they decided to release a year later, Steal This Album, because they wanted to show everybody, whether it was current fans, fans before Toxicity, or people in this era today, 2018, that they were a real group, and you need to listen to what they have to say. They're not bubblegum crap. They're not a band where all these producers got everybody together and made them do music for a budget. No, these guys knew what they wanted to talk about and knew what they needed to pass on to the other people. Let's see if there's one more thing to talk about. If there's another song to maybe look up. Well, obviously, Prison Song is definitely about the corruption of not only our laws, but also the way we look at the way prisons are ran now, whether it is a state-run or it is a privatized. I know for a fact there are companies, I am not going to go to the website and show you, that is free advertising for the crazy ones. That is free advertising for these fools that do this kind of stuff. I'm not going to promote them. Not at all. But there are, for a fact, companies that will have employment in these privatized systems so they can make cheap labor. So they can enslave people that are already enslaved for a wrongdoing that may or may not have been criminal. And I'm not going to cite any cases. I'm not going to cite any prisons. I'm not going to cite any companies that actually do that. I'm sure you guys can cite for yourself maybe companies that you think, oh, how is this $1? How is this 50 cents? How is this 50 cents? How is this 50 cents? Think about it. The cheaper the product, the cheaper the employment. Or enslavement, excuse me. So I think Prison Song is also important. And that was the first song on the record. And I know if you got it on your iPod, you got it on your CD, if you got the boombox out, or if you got it in your computer, if you got it on the streaming sites, that is an interesting song to open to. They have, I think the first note is literally just, jing. You know, they got the boom with the choke of the cymbal, so it starts out real metal, real metal, and then they go right into it. Literally the first lines are, they're trying to build a prison, they're trying to build a prison. Just like a store, just like a school, just like a playground. Why would you build it unless you think they would come? And that's what's interesting about the lyrics of the chorus. They're trying to build a prison, they're trying to build a prison. Another prison system for you and me. And I think the scariest thing about this song is that when you privatize prisons and you pretty much make prison another form of industry, another form of business, that's what's scary when you look at the way laws are being constructed, the way your rights are being constructed. And I think this is a great ending point. Check it out. Toxicity by the one and only band System of a Down. I want to thank everybody for watching my second episode. Have a great weekend. I do not think there's football on. There is the Super Bowl coming up, though. Keep the football praises up. And there's a UFC fight on FOX channel. And check it out if you guys are fight fans, and have a great weekend wherever you guys are located. And I'll be on soon. Stay cool.